it looks like rook a1 does the exact same thing. Why doesn't this work? Wow. Black's response is amazing. Black's response is absolutely amazing. How does black save themselves from getting mated when this is our threat? Does anyone have an idea? We are looking at games, if you were rated 14 to 1500. Seems like a really good place for the bishop. Looks like black has to be very careful. This is not a move that I would have played as black because of the weaknesses around the king, right? We talked about that before. When you move pawns around your king, you got to be really, really careful, especially like this when you don't have the bishop. It's one thing if you're feeding Kedowing and putting a bishop there. In this case, black doesn't have the bishop, so, and white does. So that's a big long-term weakness there. So, okay, so I don't like this too much because now it's black kind of gets a temporary blockade. I mean, yes, you can play f4 and probably get rid of the knight, but I think I would play h5 here because remember, what's the goal when we're pawn storming? We want to try to create open files for our rooks, right? That's what we want to try to do. If you play h5, you're basically guaranteeing that next move you're going to be able to create an open file for your rook here. If black takes you, you can take back and now you have an open file here. And if not, you're taking here and you have the open h file. When you play g5, now knight h5 happens and, you know, it looks like it's going to take a little while before you can get rid of your pawns and create the open file. So I think, yeah, h5 probably is what I would play here. And I don't think black should have done this. They should have just went back. Black should have just went back, kept the bishop pair. This bishop's not really awesome, right? So I don't think it was a good decision on black's part. Okay, so right here, black's -2, 2.5, -2.5. And then I'm going to guess they lose some of that advantage. Yep, now it's -1.5. So they lost a little bit by giving up the bishop pair. Okay, and then let's see, -1.6 to -0.7. So they lost another pawn's worth. So you can see how just two sort of slightly inaccurate moves, and we go from being up, you know, almost 2.5 points to barely up 1 point. Okay, I like this move a lot. I like this move a lot. Black's not castling, and you are sacrificing a pawn to get a rook. This is a great move. I like that a lot. I think black made a big mistake by not castling, actually. They should castle right away. Remember, guys, if you leave your king in the center and a rook ends up coming over, it's not going to be good. Yeah, great. Great stuff. Really nice finish. And so, I mean, why did this happen to black? One decision. It was one decision right here. Black decided to not castle for some reason. Right? Let's flip it for a second. All black had to do here was castle. And they're great. They have a great game. Game goes on. Then they follow up and develop, and they decided to do this. And then next thing you know, a few quick moves later, it's over. It's just over, right? So, castle, guys. Don't wait. So, queen d3 makes a lot of sense. Wow. Knight takes d5. Yeah. We saw a similar idea in the last stream, right? Like, as soon as black weakens the diagonal, you want to ask yourself, you know, can you take advantage of that? You pair that with the fact that there's an undefended piece, and you've got a couple of diagonal pieces here, right? And so, yeah, knight takes d5. Nice move. Very nice move. Do you have any tips to be more vigilant? What I used to do, and I think this is probably a good idea, is when you're playing a game, practice playing games where your only goal for that game is to not make the obvious mistakes. So basically throw out everything else that you're thinking about normally when you play. Because normally when you play a game of chess, you're thinking about, okay, what opening am I going to play? Let me think. Do I remember this line? Is there a trap here that I've seen before? What's my opponent trying to do? You're thinking about like long-term kind of strategic plans. Like, hey, what's the best way to develop my pieces? How do I want to arrange my piece? You're thinking about all these different things. And that's usually when the blunders happen. You're like, oh, oops. I was thinking about, 3 moves down the road. I forgot there's just a 1-move mistake. So what I used to do is just practice playing games where I would forget about all the other stuff for that game and just say, you know what? I'm just going to play this game and try not to make any big mistakes. I don't care if, 5 moves down the road, there's something that I don't see. I don't care. I'm going to just not make any big mistakes. And you kind of can train your brain to make that a habit. So that's kind of my recommendation. This looks pretty good. Usually you want the center to be locked up like this because you want to attack over here and you don't want to have to mess around with stuff going on in the center. And so I think this is a great setup for you. And I think now you can just start going over here. Yeah, all right. I think you're doing pretty well, actually. I like this. Yeah, Black's in trouble. Yeah, okay, very nice. Very nice attack and good game. So, yeah, I mean, I guess for people watching, remember this idea. When you're attacking the king like this, sometimes it's okay to ignore other threats and just go for it. Go for your attack. Now you have to use some judgment on, do I actually have a strong attack? Because if you don't and you just give up a piece, you're going to be in trouble, right? But in this case, the attack was very strong. Yeah, so first of all, you got to be careful doing this because it is going to be a threat on your rook, and it looks like you are going to lose quite a few pawns. The other thing that I'll say is, I talk a lot about how you can give up these pawns and get a bunch of tempo and get a bunch of pieces developed when you're attacking the queen. You have to be careful because in this game, most of Black's pieces are already developed, right? They already have 3 pieces developed. They're already castled. They already have a solid position. And now is the time when Black would, if they're going to be able to get away with taking a bunch of pawns, now's the time when that could happen, right? So if you play here and Black decides to go for this, well, you're going to have to castle. And then it looks like Black's going to be able to, I don't know, take this or take this. And looks like they might get this pawn too, right? If you play rook b1. And it's like, okay, yes, you can get some rook moves for free. But again, well, actually, you can't do that. The bishop's hanging. But the point is, like, Black's position is very solid. And so you got to be careful at this point in the game. I'm much more likely to give up a pawn like that earlier when all Black's pieces are kind of sitting on the back and their king's in the center than I am at a time in the game like this. So I think like maybe knight c4 looks like a pretty cool move because you hit it with tempo and you defend your pawn. And it's going to force Black to make an awkward decision about where the queen's going to go. Also, a lot of times when you play the London, the point about putting a pawn on d4 and supporting it is that you're always going to have a pawn on d4 to help you control the e5 square. So when you trade it away, you lose that. And now Black can very easily, whenever they want to play e5, kick you around, probably at some point do this. You've got this thing really supported, right? It doesn't matter if Black takes you. You're going to be able to take back, and you're going to be just fine. So I wouldn't worry so much about taking that. I'd worry about what's going on here. And like I said, knight c4 looks like a pretty nice move. Knight c4, probably castle, something like that. Rook takes f6. Am I missing something? I'm missing something. Yeah, I'm not sure what this was all about. Yeah, I don't understand that one. It looks to me like you're just giving up a rook for a bishop. I don't see a good follow-up. So I think I would have just done something else, like move my knight or, yeah, something else. I don't know. I mean, you're still in a good position. 2 knights is better than a rook still, so you're still doing fine, but, you make too many of those trades and you're back to an even game instead of, like, for example, you were up plus 13, and after this, now you're plus 5. So you went from plus 13 to plus 5. I mean, that's a big swing, right? So you got to be careful with with those kind of trades. All right, but like we said, it's still better for white. Ooh, see here, it's another sacrifice, which I'm not sure what your follow-up is. It looks like you're just giving up a knight for a pawn. I mean, yeah, you have a check, but it doesn't really look good enough to me. He took it with the rook. Yeah, this is some weird stuff going on here. So, you know, don't forget the value of the pieces, right? And I understand you're trying to attack, but you got to make sure you have a concrete follow-up if you're going to be sacrificing pieces. So going back here, when you decided to give up your rook for your bishop, what's your follow-up? How are you going to take advantage of that by getting rid of that bishop? Like, sometimes you're absolutely right. Sometimes the bishop's like the only defender, and once you get rid of it, you can follow up and you have a nice checkmate or something. But in this case, I just don't really see it, right? And so you got to make sure you do have a good follow-up. And again here, okay, I get it. The pawns are annoying. And, you know, I don't know what you were thinking, but you got to make sure, what's my follow-up after they just take me, right? Because again, we see you're up +5, and as soon as you do this, now it's +3. And so that advantage that you have is slowly going away. Whenever you get 2 pawns and a rook like this, you can always advance them using your rook to help, or you force a trade. Okay, so for example, I'm going to go here. Black's going to try to avoid the trade. Let's say they put me in check, and I move here and check and here, whatever, something like this, and they come over here. Check. Once you get this kind of setup, you can always advance these, and black can't do anything to stop you, right? You push this one first because it's defended. Everything's defended. Then you push this one. Again, everything's defended. And then you go, black's going to do something. Then you go check. Okay, look, everything's defended. Black's going to move. Then you push this one. Notice how black can't stop me. Everything is always defended. It doesn't matter what black's going to do. And of course, they can put me in check. I'm just going to run my king over. See how I'm doing this? So remember this technique, because sometimes you'll have these 2 pawns connected with the rook, and you need to know how to advance them, right? And you just keep going. Oh, it's black's turn, whatever. Okay, you just keep doing this, and then you get a queen. And black can't stop you, right? So that's good to remember. Are you working on any courses? Yes, JM, I am actually. The next one's gonna be good. The next one's gonna be really good. It's gonna be like an aggressive offbeat opening system for white. So if you're white and you play e4, it's gonna be like an offbeat aggressive response to anything black can play. So it's gonna take me a while to finish it, but it's in progress, and I've been finding some very nice lines that I've never even seen before prior to preparing for this course. So it's pretty cool. I'm kind of pumped about that. I feel like the game already kind of got away from you. So let's go back and maybe, where did it fall apart? I feel like you were playing fine right here. Everything was great. And I think I would have, like I said, I would have played knight c3. And then maybe that's one thing, because the queen wouldn't have had this nice square to go to when you chase it away. So like, for example, if we play, let's just say knight c3, and let's say black does something similar, like what did they do? I think they played d6 or something. Now we come in with our knight, and the queen can't go to f5. So the queen, I mean, if it goes here, we're going to take with the knight, again with tempo. If it goes here, we're going to take with the bishop. So realistically, the queen probably would have to go back. And now you can take maybe even with the bishop here, you know, and I think this looks a little bit better than if we go back to the game after e5. So let me just say this, e5 definitely is a move that you want to be thinking about, but you also don't want to do it too early, right? Because as soon as you do it, you kind of give up these holes, and you give black some squares to maneuver into. And so you want to save it, right? Because right now you've got everything covered. So it's nice and pretty. You want to save it for just the right moment that you really have a nice follow-up. Okay, so hopefully that helps, because I think you were doing fine here. If you just play knight c3, yeah, I think you were okay. And I would say use Stockfish. Like, analyze every game that you play with Stockfish and try to figure out why it's saying every move that it's saying. So, like, for example, this position right here, it says rook e1 and then bishop c2. There's a big difference, -2 to -4. So why is that such a big difference? So the way that I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to play the move that Stockfish says, and I'm going to kind of follow the line. So let's just say queen c6. And what am I going to do? King g1. Okay, and I'm going to say, what if black just develops a piece? What's going to happen? I'm going to keep following it until I see what Stockfish wants to do. Takes. And then I guess we have a nice little, oh, there's the idea. Rook takes e6. I just saw it for a second. Rook takes e6. So this is what Stockfish wanted. And now let's figure out why. And it looks like it's because we're threatening the knight. If the knight just tries to run away somewhere, we're going to have a nasty attack on the king. Queen to e2, and here we go. Black is stuck in the center. Can't castle because of our bishop. We're ready to play a discover check. Looks pretty good. Now, that was pretty deep, but I see the idea, right? And again, it has to go back with like, hey, king's in the center. Get your rook there and start doing some stuff, right? So that's one kind of learning opportunity, and I would just keep going through like that. Well, normally when you see this, the best thing to do is probably just to play d5, because that d5 pawn's really annoying. It stops the knight from coming out, and so that's what I would play. Yeah, you can do this, but now you've transitioned into a Sicilian, and it's you don't get the opportunity to play d5 if black just takes you, right? So like normally this is just a Sicilian, right? And black usually trades this off so that you can't push that pawn forward and like get this annoying pawn on d5. So if you have the option to do that, why does it change the board color? I don't like how it changes the color. I'm just going to go back. Sorry. So now you have the option to do that. I think you should just play d5 for future reference. So I'm actually okay with this. You know, you are going to lose a pawn, but I think you're going to get a lot of compensation, because it looks like if black goes for this and takes with the queen, it looks like the dark squares. I mean, there's got to be something there. So I like this a lot. I like this a lot. They did go for it. Let's see, what did you? Okay, you took the knight. Let's turn on the engine, but I'm willing to bet it's going to tell you knight to b5 was a killer move. Let's see. Let's see if I'm right. Takes. And what does Stockfish say? Yep, knight to b5. How did I know that that was going to be the move? And I'm not even calculating everything. I'm just looking at a couple of things really quickly. Number one, it's with tempo on the queen. Okay. Number two, it's threatening a very nasty threat. Number three, it's threatening another threat. And number four, it kind of opens up my bishop. Then now I have this as a move. And, you know, you put all this stuff together, and I'm just telling you, there's going to be some tactic that pops up. There's going to be something. There's just no way when black has to move the queen that they can stop everything. So let's see. Queen e5 maybe is a try, right? They're trying to defend everything. And probably we can do f4. Let me see. Yep, f4. And again, I'm not like, you know, analyzing everything. I'm just kind of using the weaknesses in the position to find these moves, right? Why am I playing f4? Well, because the queen is the only piece that's really defending anything here. I'm trying to take advantage of this. Let's kick the queen away. So we play f4. And what happens if the queen goes all the way back to b8 to try to defend? Now, remember that move I said, bishop c5? Yep. And why is this so good? Number one, black can't castle. That's huge. That's huge. And then number two, well, you're coming in this square and black can't stop you. You just can't stop you. You might actually move the bishop there and trap the queen. You might move the knight there, and black doesn't have castling rights. You've got potential fork if it goes over here, or if it goes here. It's just so good. +8 for white. And this stuff happens a lot. This stuff happens a lot because people don't pay attention to these weaknesses and think that it's as big of a deal as it actually is, right? Black can resign right here. Stockfish has the best move for black is h5. I mean, what does that tell you about the position? And you're going to play, you can either go here and trap the queen, which is really good, or you can play here and get the check, and black, you know, probably has to go here, and you can like just take some pieces for free, and it's nasty. It's nasty. So going back, you were absolutely spot on by castling and giving this up, but you just didn't know how to take advantage of it from here, right? And so you want to be thinking about those dark squares next time. And yeah, if you can have an opportunity like that, you got to go for it. When you trade, that knight was going to be one of your best pieces to help infiltrate. Now, you can still probably do some cool stuff with your bishop, maybe, but it's not so easy now, right? It's not so easy. When is it a good idea to advance the f-pawn if you're always nervous to do it? So It's good when you have a strong threat and black doesn't have any way to make you pay for it. So it's a good question. Do we have a strong threat? Yes. We're attacking the queen. Black has to move the queen. Very strong threat. Also, does black have a way to make us pay for it on this diagonal? Black doesn't even have that dark squared bishop because they traded it. We have our dark squared bishop, right? So I'm not worried in the least bit about playing f4. And on top of that, if I needed to, I also have king h1 as a sort of a backup move if I did trade my bishop at some point and I had to move, right? So this is where it's like, okay, general rule says don't move this pawn because we don't want to weaken the king. But in this case, it's an exception. And the threat is so much stronger than, you know, the downside. It seems like you should have a strong attack. So what I'm doing is just asking myself the question of like, is this the right plan? You know, is chasing the queen away and then bringing this back the right plan? I don't think so. So a couple things. Number one, I like your rook here. I like it here because it's stopping the bishop. So I like that. And number two, notice how black has no pieces over here on the king side. Like this bishop, nope. This rook, nope. This queen, not really. It's going to be a while before it can really do anything. I mean, that's not really the diagonal black wants to be on. This rook, not really doing much. So the fact that I have my bishop and my queen, I'm going to be like thinking, okay, how can I make something happen here? Maybe it's rook b3 to try to come over here. Maybe it's, you know, f5 to try to push on f6. Because if I can get the pawn to f6, black's done for, right? Now you have to think what's going to happen here. But even that looks pretty good because then I can take with my queen. And I've got a, you know, checkmate threat that looks very difficult to stop. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, if you want to get from 14 to 15, 16, 1700, you want to be thinking about this stuff, right? So really got to think, you got to zone in on, or hone in, I guess is the word I'm trying to say, hone in on what's the features about the position, right? The features are black's position's a mess. Pieces are all discoordinated, not doing anything. Yours are great. That's when you kind of want to strike, right? Because it might not seem like a big deal, queen e2, right? But if you keep playing moves like this, eventually black's going to maybe create some counterplay. Now, the good news for you is you're up a piece, right? But imagine if it was an even game, eventually black's going to figure out a way to get this bishop out. They're going to play here. They're going to play c5. Next thing you know, you have to be careful. There's a checkmate threat. Next thing you know, the rooks get involved. Maybe they start pushing their pawn. There's any number of things that could happen. But if that happens, you know, your advantage could dwindle, okay? And as an example, this is plus 4.6. Back here, it's much higher than that, plus 9, plus 10, okay? So, you know, it's a 6-point swing almost, right? So that's the kind of stuff you want to think about. Yeah, wow, that is a tough game. And now you're actually losing somehow. It's amazing. All right, so this is good. This is a good learning opportunity. Let's go, where did the problems really start? Rook to a3 is fine. You're blockading the pawn. But what ended up happening was a lot of sort of dancing around with these pieces that didn't really do much for you. Okay, so watch carefully. We've got it blockaded. We're good. And then watch the next couple moves. We go here. We go here. So that was like 1, 2, 3 moves to blockade. So that was like 3 moves to blockade this pawn when you already had it blockaded, right? If you imagine, let's go like back here for a second. Imagine in this position, if you just make a beeline with your king. King e2. We'll say black does something similar to what they did, right? Takes it. King here. They're going to try to bring their king up. King here. They're going to try to bring their king. Look at this. I've got it. That pawn is mine. And the game goes on. But I've eliminated, you know, this annoying pawn. Because I didn't waste time sort of dancing around, right? I just went for it right away. And so this is important in the endgame. You can't waste time. It's kind of like in the opening of the game, right? If you waste time developing your pieces, you find yourself just behind. You just like, man, I just didn't have enough time to get my pieces out because maybe you wasted time moving pieces back and forth or something. Same thing can happen in the endgame, especially when the kings need to get involved. If you wait too long, it's like, oh man, you know, now what happened, right? So And this is, don't feel bad. Like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. Like, this is pretty common. A lot of players do this at the end of the game because they're not like 100% sure what to do, I think. And so they end up kind of like, well, all right, let's do this. And then, well, maybe I'll go here. And actually, I don't really want to take that pawn. You know, maybe I'll do something else. And then, you know what I mean? And so that's what I would say. Like, you got to understand what you need to do and then go for it right away. So bring the king in. You can't really go wrong with activating the king in a position like that. And it has to do with like the way you position your pawns. So what I recommend too is when you've got like 2 against 1 like this, you don't want to let the 1 pawn stop the 2 pawns. Okay, so don't play g3 because then g4 happens and now your pawns are stuck, right, because of the en passant. So if you try to play h4, black's going to take you and now you have another passed pawn to worry about, right? So what do you need to do? You need to play h3. Because if you play h3, black can't move. And then next move, let's just say, I don't know what black was going to do. Now you can play g3, and then you can play h4, and you get your own passed pawn, and this is a different game, right? You can play h4. Now, yes, black's going to be able to go get it, but at least it gives you time. You can probably come over here and take this, and the game goes on, right? So keep that in mind. Don't let 1 pawn stop 2 pawns in the endgame like that. Okay, you play h3 first. You don't let the pawn push on you. Let's see, like what happened in the game, like this. Yeah, here you let the king come in, right? So black only really has one thing going for them in this position. Well, 2 things. Their king's pretty active, and they have this really annoying pawn on a2, right? That's all black has. So as long as you don't let this king come over here, you're fine, right? And so you got to be very careful about a move like this, right? And so I think if you just play maybe just c4, push the king back, bring your king over, take the pawn, it's over, right? All right, but after this, yeah, it's too bad. Tough game, but hopefully you learned a lot from that end game, and you know, going forward, you can avoid that kind of stuff. John's game, and the question was how to punish early kingside pawn pushes against the London. Any tips or principles? Okay. So without even looking at the game, I'll just tell you, generally speaking, if they attack you on the king side, you want to be doing something in the center, most likely, striking back in the center. But let's see how the game goes, and we'll see if that applies. G6, wow. Yeah, see, even here, I'm like, okay, if black's going to be doing this, I'm going to start thinking about playing e4 as quick as I can. Probably win a castle first, and then play e4. But I'm going to start thinking about busting open the center. That's just what you do. First of all, you don't want to lose your bishop. So I'm probably going to play h4. And why am I playing h4 as opposed to like h3? Well, h3, what did you play in the game? You play h3, okay. h3 allows g4. And this is kind of an easy way for black to force some files to be opened up. And, you know, if you take, then they're taking, the rook's going to come in. You got to move your knight because the pawn's attacking it. It's not really what you want. When you play h4, what's black going to do? Well, if they push on you now, guess what? Everything's locked up. You're happy. You can just move this knight, probably to e1. And guess what? How's black going to make progress? Not that easily. Yeah, they can play f5, but this is all locked up. I mean, yes, they're attacking that, but I don't like black's position here, and I'm going to start thinking about ways to open up the center. So I guess now that I look at this bishop, you do have to be a little bit careful because of that. But generally speaking, this is how I'm going to play something like h4. Okay, when you play h3, then g4 is just a very easy way to, you know, to open it up. So let's see what happened. Oh, they played h4. Okay, so you should be okay here. You go back. Yeah, that's great. And now's the moment. You want to open up the center, like right now, e4. Did you play e4? No, okay. Oh, that's a good move too. That's a good move too, because they can't castle, but e4 is really what you want to play. So maybe throw in the check and then play e4. Makes sense. I think that's what I would do. Sorry, kids are waking up. All right, so let's see. Check. Okay, you took. There's nothing wrong with taking, but I don't like giving up the bishop for the knight that easily. I think I would play e4 here. I want to get my other pieces into the game and start attacking the king, right? I want to get this file open so my rook can play a role. I want to get this knight up here. That's generally speaking what you need to do. Okay, now you play e4. That's good. That's good. You took. Yeah, that's probably fine. Took that. Okay. Yeah, you're not playing it bad. I just want to get these pieces more into the game as opposed to maybe taking this pawn. So like rook e1, that rook's going to be very, very helpful. And going back here, I think if we just play this right now, this is what I like. The issue with what I'm seeing here is that the attack is happening on your king. Right? You can't like prevent black from doing that if that's what they want to do. You just have to decide how are you going to use your moves to counter that. And so you can choose to either go for the center plan, so something like rook e1, knight e4, put pressure on the center, or in your case, you're going over here. Now, yes, you got some pawns, but 2 pawns is probably not enough for a big attack on your king. You want to be like getting some center control, because like once you bust open the center and get some pieces in the center, they help you defend. Like if my knight was on e4, it helps you defend stuff, but it also like threatens things in the center. And so that's usually much better than coming over on the other side of the board. Now, if your opponent's king was over here, that's a different story, because then you're going to attack the king. So great. But in this case, the king's over here. You're kind of like going where the action is not happening, right? And so I don't know how this game ended, but I'm going to just guess based on this move that black started to keep attacking and you just, your pieces were kind of misplaced and it didn't work out well. That's what I'm going to guess happened. Yeah, see, like black's, they're committed and you don't really have much happening in the center. This knight never got moved. The rooks never got involved, right? And you just don't have much. Those 2 pawns don't really matter. I would much rather have these moves back and have, let's say, these moves in here with some pawns on there, and you're going to have more options, right? So that's what happened, and now it's really tough. You're just trying to survive at this point. And yeah, it looks like you did survive. So nice recovery there. And yeah, you won the game. Okay, cool. So you won the game. But yeah, I think big takeaway, just strike back right away. And if you get like the suspicion that your opponent's going to do that, you can even like proactively open the center. I mean, like even here, it's not a terrible idea to just play e4. Just play e4. Like your opponent's not really stopping you. They're not even really putting much pressure on your center, so you don't even like need all this support. Just play, oh, it's not your turn. Here, sorry. Just play e4. Get that going right away. And you're going to see it's just much more difficult for your opponent to attack you. But see, and now if they do it prematurely, you actually cannot castle, right? If you don't want to. You can say, I'll just keep developing and maybe I'll castle this way. And then it's like, what is black doing with all their pawns? So anyway, I hope that helps, John. And hopefully you learned some things there. Good question, though, because, yeah, this is, not necessarily easy to understand what to do. So I appreciate the question. Okay. You take that. There's nothing wrong with taking that. I think personally, I don't like just kind of putting my opponent's bishop on a nice diagonal. So maybe I would just play e3 or even rook e1 or something else and not, do that for them. But that's a small thing. I guess the other thing is when you do that, you lose the control over the e5 square. So black can more easily play e5 in the future. So keep that in mind. A lot of times, you try to keep your pawn on d4 to stop that, because if black gets both pawns, it's pretty annoying. But it's not a huge deal, just a small thing. Well, they took it. That's nice for you. It's just giving up the bishop pair. Yeah, I like your position a lot now. As soon as they play this move, I like it a lot. Why do I like it? Because look at the outposts that you have now for your knight. This one's covered, obviously, but yeah, this looks good. c4 is going to happen. The bishop's going to get open. I really like your position now. And kind of goes to show, be careful when you have the pawns centered like this. Be careful pushing them forward, right? Because you only get one chance to do that. And once you do it, you can't go back. There's no going back. And those weaknesses are permanent. So just really think through, is this the moment I want to do this? Am I getting something, you know, that I can use more than giving up something, basically? Yeah, that was ooh, okay. So you got to be careful for doubled rooks in an endgame like this. Doubled rooks anywhere can be very annoying, but if it's on the second rank, that's like you got to really, you know, think how you're going to deal with that, right? And so I think right here you got to think long and hard about, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with this? Okay, so King G2. What does Stockfish say? It says Bishop F3. Okay, so like I was saying, just proactively attacking it. Rook D8 check. Okay, and then Bishop F3. Yeah, so it basically wants Bishop F3. And let's just say Black just swings over here and tries to do the same thing. What is Stockfish going to tell us to do now? Interesting. B6. So I'm curious, what's the plan? I guess we're just pushing the pawn. Okay, and how are we dealing with this now? King to G1. So basically what Stockfish is saying is, yes, you got that, but you don't have time to take my bishop because I'm going to get a queen. And so I guess Black has to do something like this to try to stop it. And then game goes on. But interesting how Stockfish is setting this up. Notice how the bishop is going to be defending against the rook checks. And so now you can just move this somewhere. Let's just say d5. And you're actually pretty safe. So that's a good idea. And so the point is, when you see it's coming, start planning how you want to deal with it. There's lots of ways you could deal with it. Sometimes you can just defend it. In this case, I don't think that works very well because your rook's kind of helping blockade that. But, you know, sometimes you can defend it. In this case, obviously this rook can't because the pawn's in the way. I mean, I guess you could play f5. That could be a move. You sack a pawn so that you have rook f4. Whatever it is, you want to be thinking about those ideas, right? Because this way, you didn't really get much in return. Your pawn is like too slow, right? The way Stockfish did it, your pawn would have been further along. And so now you're just kind of in trouble. Whoa. Whoa. Wow. There's a mate in 5 here? Really? Okay. Would anyone like to pause and try to find this? White to play in mate in 5. That's a fascinating puzzle. Somebody said rook check. Nope, it's not rook check because the knight will take you. And this is covered. Yeah, Evan, there's a mate in 5. It's amazing. It's actually amazing. Somebody said rook takes pawn. Nope, it's not rook takes pawn. Nope, Joe, not rook takes pawn. All right, a couple people have said the right answer. A couple people have said the right answer. It's only one move, which is really interesting. We'll talk about it in just a second. Yeah, okay. Some people are saying it. Rook to e1. So what's the idea? Well, first of all, we're going for mate. We're checkmate right away, right? So how does black stop that? And it's not that easy because none of the rooks can really help. The knight can't really do anything. If the knight tries to block, then this rook comes down, right? So the only thing black can do is to go king f8, okay? So now we have mate in 4. And this is kind of the weird move that was difficult for me to see when I was looking at it. If you want to try again, mate in 4 from this position. What's the move now? Yeah, we'll come back. Rook a1 doesn't work. And I think it has to do... well, we'll see if we can figure that out. After we look at this, we'll look at why rook a1 didn't work. No, rook a1 does not work as well. And the only reason I know that is because Stockfish is telling me. So, what's the move here for us? All right, so the move is rook to d7. And what we're doing is we'd like to come over here, which would force the king to go back, and then this rook comes in and delivers the checkmate, right? So that's the sort of the threat. And so then you have to ask, okay, what can black do to stop that? Well, somebody had mentioned rook to e2, blocking off our rook, right? But we have a nice way to finish it from here. And if you want mate in 3, what's the move here? And this one is nice. This one's very nice. Yep. You guys are saying it. Promote the pawn to a queen or a rook, doesn't matter. The knight has to take it. Then this rook comes in and black has to block and you checkmate. Ooh. Beautiful, right? So sort of the key move going back was this rook d7 idea, threatening to go to f7. That's really what black couldn't stop, and that's why it was mate. Okay, so now big question though, somebody had said rook a1. It looks like rook a1 does the exact same thing. Why doesn't this work? Wow, black's response is amazing. Black's response is absolutely amazing. How does black save themselves from getting mated when this is our threat? Does anyone have an idea? People are saying rook to b7. Rook takes b7. Any other ideas? So rook takes b7 is the wrong move because why is that the wrong move? I think we just check. Yeah, we just check, and black can't. What are they going to do? If they block with the rook, we just take it, and then we mate. And if they block with like the knight, then this rook just comes down, and they can't do anything else. So that's why rook takes doesn't work. So what can black play? Some people are saying h6. h6 does not work because, again, you come down check. And even though you create the space, there's still this rook, right? And so you're still mated. It's an incredible position. It's absolutely amazing that this came from a real game. So that doesn't work. So we looked at this. We looked at h6. Some people said the right move. Yeah, rook to b6. That's right. Rook to b6. Wow. The point is that if we go check now, black's going to block us with the knight and put our king in check. And now we just lose. Now we just lose because we got to leave. As soon as we leave our king, our mating net is gone, and black has options, and it's over. We're going to lose. Black's going to just take our pawn. So that's why, going back here, not rook a1, rook e1 was the correct move. Now that's not easy to see, but you know, Evan, what you can think about in these kind of positions is this is kind of like a back rank mate type of setup. The way that you have your king tucked in there, it's shielded from the rook checks by all of black's pieces, right? There's no way that black can check you right now. And so it's actually you who can go on the offensive, and that's kind of how you'd want to think through that. Now it's still a difficult mate to find.